You talk about sometimes success is less about making good habits easy, and sometimes it's also about making bad habits hard. Let's start with good habits. How do you create them? And then let's dive into bad habits. How do you actually break them?
Yeah, sure. So if we're going to focus on good habits, I think there are a couple strategies that you can keep in mind that sort of help make this process easier. So in the book, I lay out what I call the 4 laws of behavior change. And so for building a good habit, it's make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. And those 4 are just kind of shorthand for a lot of the strategic and tactical examples that I give in the book for how to do those things. So I'm just going to focus on 1 or 2 right now. Obviously, there are a lot more in the book. But if I have to recommend people to start in one place, I would say start with make it easy. Start with making it as easy as possible. And I like to recommend the 2-minute rule. So the 2-minute rule basically says take whatever habit you're trying to build and scale it down to something that takes 2 minutes or less to do. So, read 30 books a year becomes read 1 page, or write your book finally becomes write 1 sentence, or, do yoga 4 days a week becomes take out my yoga mat. And sometimes people kind of resist these things, because they're like, well, what I actually want to do is like run 3 miles. I don't want to just put on my running shoes, right? Which is what would take 2 minutes. And I get what they're saying, right? They think like, oh, it sounds kind of like a mental trick. And if you feel that way, then my encouragement would be to force yourself to limit yourself to just the first 2 minutes. So I had a reader who he ended up losing over 100 pounds. And one of the first things they did was he went to the gym, but he wasn't allowed to stay for longer than 5 minutes. So he got in the car, drove to the gym, got out, did half an exercise, got back in the car and drove home. And it sounds silly, right? It sounds ridiculous. It's like, well, clearly that's not going to get you in shape. But what you realize is that he was becoming the type of person that went to the gym 4 days a week, right? He was mastering the art of showing up. And I think this is why making your habits easy and simple and small is such a crucial insight, which is that a habit must be established before it can be improved, right? You have to make it like the standard in your life, make it your new normal before you worry about optimizing or expanding or updating from there. And so often we just, because of ambition or because we get motivated or because we're excited about making a change, we just tend to go all or nothing. It's like, well, let me try to find the best workout program or the perfect business idea or the ideal diet to follow. And we think if we can't do it perfectly, then we might as well not do it at all. And so I feel like the 2-minute rule kind of helps counteract that tendency and get you into the pattern of showing up, even if it's in a small way, even if it's only for 2 minutes. But you got to be that kind of person who shows up for 2 minutes before you have the chance to be the person who does it in a bigger or more ambitious way.
I think that's brilliant. You got to be able to do 2 push-ups before you can do 20. And if you do 2 every day, you might wake up and do 3, and one day you're doing 20 or 40 or 50. In fact, the whole idea of make it obvious, easy, attractive, and satisfying, that I have a newer habit in my life that I tried, James, for probably, I bet you I had 5 or 6 failed attempts at journaling. I read so many people that say it's important and it's helpful, and I know that it is, but I tried to write 3 or 4 or 5 pages every day, and it would go 2 or 3 days and I'd quit. I came across a 5-year journal, which it really embodies everything that you say. You only have to write 4 or 5 lines and you're done. And then you can see kind of year over year. If I look back to the previous year on this same exact day, I can see what I did in 2 years, 3 years and such. So I'm now starting into my 5th year on this. And I put the journal out by my bed. So it's obvious. It takes me less than probably 3 minutes to do. It's easy. The journal looks good. It's attractive. And I'm a journaler now. It's satisfying. And so it's changed my identity. And every single one of those steps you said is the difference between failure and actually becoming a journaler. Now it's not just something I do. It's part of my identity. It's who I am. And so I think your ideas are fantastic. I love the two-minute start. Stopping, though, is a whole different strategy. What would you say to, now I've got something, I want to quit smoking, I want to quit sleeping in too late, I want to quit yelling at people. What suggestions do you have for stopping?
Let's use the sleeping example. And so first of all, if you want to break a bad habit, then my high level recommendation is just invert those 4 laws. So make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. That's for building a good habit. Then if you want to break a bad one, you want to make it invisible. So make the cues of your bad habits less visible, make it unattractive, make it difficult. So increase the friction, make it less convenient, and make it unsatisfying. So have like a punishment instead of a reward. I'll give you kind of 2 ideas for kind of curtailing these behaviors or breaking them. So first one, you might be surprised how many bad habits will fade away or reduce themselves just if they're not as obvious or convenient as they were before. You know, so like take the habit of watching television. A lot of people feel like they watch too much TV, but if you walk into pretty much any living room in America, where do all the couches and chairs face? You know, like they all face the television. So it's like, what is that room designed to get you to do? It's the most obvious and available and frictionless habit in that space. So there are a variety of steps you can take here, right? It's kind of on a spectrum from like least extreme to most extreme, but you could take the chair and turn it away from the TV so that it faces a coffee table with a book on it. You could put the remote control inside of a shelf or a drawer so that you're, less likely to see it. You could take the television itself and put it in a wall unit or a cabinet so that it's behind doors. And then you could also, increase the friction of the task. So you could like unplug the TV after each use and then only plug it back in if you can say the name of the show that you want to watch. So you can't, just turn Netflix on and find something. Or, if you want to be really extreme, you could take the TV off the wall, put it in the closet, and then only set it back up if you really wanted to watch something. I actually had one reader who, she and her husband, they watched a ton of sports events, and eventually they were like, this is so ridiculous. We need to figure out a way to reduce the amount of time we're spending watching stuff. And so they decided they just were going to get rid of their TV. And their new measure was, if we don't care enough about this game to drive down the street and drive 15 minutes and watch it at the sports bar, then we don't actually want to watch it. And, again, variety of things there from most extreme or least extreme to most extreme. But just implementing some of those things will reduce the odds that you fall into that habit. I've seen this in other areas too, for example, take beer. If I have a beer in my fridge and it's in the front of the fridge, it's like somewhere I can see it on the shelf that's like right in front of the door, or it's in the door, then I'll grab one and drink it at night just because it's there. But if I take that same 6-pack and I slide it like on the lowest shelf all the way to the back where I can't really see it when I open the door, sometimes it'll sit there for like a month. And so it's like, well, did I want it or not? I kind of wanted it if it was there, but if you just make it less obvious, then you're less likely to fall into it. Now, I do want to kind of add an addendum there, which is to say that, and this I think is true for all the ideas in Atomic Habits, I'm not going to say that this is going to stop like a true addiction, right? If you're actually dealing with alcoholism or something like that, it's different. But I do think that all these strategies are useful, whether you're an addict or not, that, they do kind of help nudge you in the right direction. So that's the first piece, make it invisible. But the second idea, let's come back to that sleeping example that you gave. So you want to stop sleeping in, or, maybe you want to get up early and do a workout instead before work or something like that. Well, one thing that you can do is that you can make it less attractive. You can make it unattractive to stay in bed. So how do you do that? Well, one strategy is to use what psychologists call a commitment device. So let's say that you go to bed, you're like, all right, I'll set my alarm. Tomorrow's going to be the day. I'll wake up at 6 and I'll go for a run. Go to sleep and 6 a.m. rolls around and, your bed is warm, it's cold outside, and you're like, well, I kind of feel like sleeping. You press snooze and you don't do the run. But if you rewind the clock, go back to the previous day, and this time you text a friend and you say, hey, can we meet at the park at 6:30 and go for a run? Well, now 6 a.m. rolls around and your bed is still warm and still cold outside. But if you don't get out and go for the run, well, now you're a jerk because you leave your friend at the park all alone. And so that text that you sent, that's like a commitment device. It's a way to lock in your future behavior. You kind of change the equation in your mind so that now sleeping in means something different. It doesn't just mean you get to stay in a warm bed. It also means, oh, you're being a bad friend. And so little devices like that, little strategies like that, and I have a longer list of them in the book, they help you get over some of those bad habits or reframe the equation in your mind so that they're not as attractive as they were in the past.
How important would you say accountability is in the success of good and bad habits?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is something, I wrote about the influence of the social environment on your habits in the book. I think it's chapter 9 or chapter 10. And your family and friends play a really crucial role in what habits you find attractive and what things you feel motivated to do. There are a lot of examples of this, if you move into a new neighborhood and you walk outside on Tuesday night and you see all of your neighbors have their recycling out, then you think, oh, I guess recycling is something that people do in this neighborhood. Like people like us need to sign up for that. So then you get in the habit of doing that every week. Or, all your family members are going to church on Sunday. So then you're like, well, we need to go too. And even if you don't consciously think those things, you start to internalize that, right? We kind of get like nudged along or pulled along by the people that surround us or what our family and friends are doing. And this can be a powerful way to build, pretty much any kind of habit. But I think that I undersold the importance of how socially reinforced our behavior is. I mean, man, there are so many things, why do you stop at red lights and stop signs? You do it because that's the expectation, right? That's what everybody else in the society does. And there are so many habits that are like that. Things where we fall in line because we know the expectation is to act that way. Why do you wear a dress or a suit and tie to a job interview? There's no reason you have to do that. You could wear a bathing suit if you wanted, but you don't because that's not what the tribe or that group or society at large expects for that situation. And so many choices and behaviors throughout life are shaped that way. So your question was, I think, probably more about accountability specifically, right? Like having a friend expecting that of you. But I bring that up, this larger social phenomenon up, because I think that in many ways might be the more powerful form of accountability. What does the tribe expect? What does your group, whether it's your coworkers or the people that you work out with at the gym or the people that you play chess with or volunteer with on the weekend or whatever the thing is, whatever the group is that you're a part of, what do they expect? And what the group expects is often the most powerful form of accountability. And I think it's worth it to mention why that's the case. Our ancestors grew up in tribes, and if you were abandoned by the tribe, then it was a death sentence. And so we all are wired to have this deep sense of belonging, this deep sense of community, to belong to the people around us. And so nobody wants to be ostracized from the group. Nobody wants to be abandoned by the tribe. And because of that, we care deeply about what others think of us, about what the expectations of the group is, whether that's at work or at home or elsewhere. And we care about it because it helps us if people think better of us, if people think highly of us. And so I don't know that there's any way to get around that. A lot of the time people talk about it like it's a bad thing, well, don't let people's opinions of you sway you, or don't worry too much about what others think. And I agree, when taken to an extreme, that's certainly not a healthy thing to do. But the truth is, caring about what those around us think and what they expect is often a really good strategy. That's the reason we stop at red lights and stop signs, or at least one of the reasons. So my point there is that be very careful about the tribes that you join, about the groups that you spend time with. Think carefully about those people that you're surrounded by and what those social norms are for those groups. Because the social norms of the group, the expectations of the tribe, is maybe the most powerful form of accountability when it comes to sticking with habits for the long term.